Shouldn't be here at all, given their backdoor entry into this competition via the second-tier AFC Challenge Cup 2.5 years ago. Even their coach says they're approaching this game with trepidation. It could well be a cricket score more reminiscent of the MCG. As it is, we're at the Al Sadd Stadium in the Qatari capital of Doha on a beautifully mild afternoon for the opening game in Group C. That also includes South Korea and Bahrain. They play a little bit later on in Al Rayyan. First up, it's India and Australia. And let's take a pause for the national anthems. Well, 4 years ago, the Socceroos were overconfident and underprepared. Have they learned the lessons, and are they about to make a real challenge for major silverware here at this Asian Cup? They've got a relatively straightforward start, at least on paper. India, the lowest ranked team in the tournament, and Australia, of course, the highest. And added to their low ranking, there's been lots of injuries in the Indian camp as well. They've had an horrendous build-up, conceding 22 goals in 4 friendlies. This is the Indian side, as we say, massive problems in the build-up. Their most famous player, Baichung Bhutia, out with a calf injury, and striker Sushil Singh only found out 2 days ago he was suspended, so he's been replaced by Mohammad Rafi. Sunil Chetri is the only overseas-based player. He's with Sporting Kansas City in the US, and we're told he's being watched by Perth Glory today. Defender Gurumangi Singh also has links with Australia. He trialled with Melbourne Hearts last year. All our officials today are from the United Arab Emirates. The referee is Ali Al-Badwawi, who is a Dubai police officer. His 2 assistants, Saleh Al-Marzouki and Yasser Marat. The 2 captains, Lucas Neal of Australia, the 32nd occasion he's led his country, and Climax Lawrence is the Indian skipper. Well, India have got great support inside the Jassim bin Hamad Stadium. Lots of expats living in this part of the world, of course. A few Aussies here too. Here is the Australian lineup. Holger Osik has made good on his promise to go with experience. The average age of this side is 30, and two of the older hands, Tim Cahill and Harry Kewell, are paired together in attack. And Sasha Ognanovsky has won the battle to partner captain Lucas Neal in the centre of defence. There's Bobby Houghton, the Indian coach, vastly experienced. He took Malmo to the final of the European Cup way back in 1979 and has also led India to 3 major trophies. But this is a different level entirely. And Holger Osik, of course, taking charge of a competitive game for the first time with the Socceroos. Could this be the first step to a unique regional double after he led Canada to success in the CONCACAF Gold Cup back in 2000? Quick check on the subs bench. Baichung Bhutia is listed for India, but it's unlikely that he will play any part today. So at the ground where Australia clinched World Cup qualification 18 months ago, is this the start of something special at the Asian Cup, Andy Harbour?
Well, they'll certainly get this first game out of the way as quickly as possible. There's a lot of expectation around the national team of Australia that they're going to rack up quite a few goals.
Here's the first attack being led by Brett Holman. And it's the first corner.
And the sooner they can settle those nerves, the better for the part of India. Their hope today is that they're faster and with better technique than the Australian players. Only time will tell if that's the case. There are severe doubts that that will be so, in which case this mismatch should go the way the bookies are predicting, and that's with the green and gold.
Kalina's corner. And fielded to huge cheers by Subrata Pal, the Indian goalkeeper. Is it disrespectful, Andy, that so many people have been talking about this potentially being a cricket score?
Well, it's not disrespectful, I guess, given the pedigree of both teams at the moment. The current standing, it's what people are going to comment. It's fair enough comment too. And it's up to the players of India to ensure that that doesn't materialise here this afternoon.
Now Harry Kewell trying to get on the end of a long ball from David Carney. He's shepherded away from it by Anwar Ali. So Kumar Singh earns the throw-in for the Bangra boys of India.
But India is a very important piece, potentially, of the football puzzle. And Bobby Houghton's doing his bit, and the players are doing their bit. But really, the organisation of football and the administrators need to make sure that this football-loving country, and it is a football-loving country, actually gets its act together. And maybe participation in the AFC Asian Cup for 2011 will be part of the catalyst for that happening.
27 years since they were last on the big regional stage. They lost 3 games in that 1984 edition and drew 1. 0-0 draw against Iran, and how Subrat Pal would love a clean sheet today. Might be a busy man this afternoon. Perfect temperatures, by the way, in Doha today, and the pitch is an absolute picture. All of the surfaces have been good here in Qatar for this Asian Cup, as David Carney knocks the free kick in. Anwar Ali, again to rapturous applause from the gallery, wins the header. And away come India through Mohammad Rafi. Listen to the roars of the crowd. Sunil Chetri, their star man, trying to get in ahead of Kalina, but he's too strong.
That's a terrific noise early, isn't it? We got a slight taste of this on Friday night when the tournament opened, and India was announced as a participating nation. There was a huge roar around the stadium. Those fans have brought that noise into the Al Sadd Arena, the scene of Australia's qualification, ultimately, for the 2010 FIFA World Cup.
Emerton launches one early for Harry Kewell. Holman is the only support at the far post. That's a good diving header from Sir Kumar Singh. You get the feeling, Andy, that every Indian touch is going to be cheered to the rafters this evening.
Well, it's certainly the case that every attack from Australia that doesn't result in a goal will be very warmly received by the Indian fans. And fair enough too. Their preparation for this tournament has not been the best.
That's an understatement. 9-1 they lost to Kuwait. 5-0 to the UAE. 6-3 to Yemen.
We had a series of matches in Portugal recently too, playing lower league teams. Found that tough going also.
And on top of all that, their starman Bhutia unfit. Sushil Singh suspended. Anthony Pereira, who's a first-choice winger, hasn't made the trip to the Middle East either. So real problems for Bobby Houghton. But they will want to put on a respectable showing in this Group C, in which, of course, they are the rank outsiders. Carney with the crossfield ball. And Kuhl had fouled his man, Deepak Kumar Mandal. More cheers from the stands.
Yeah, the elbow just going across the defender, Deepak. Very cool, the offender. That's a good decision from the referee.
This is NP Pradeep. His full name is Nadu Pabrambil Papachen Pradeep. So you'll forgive us for calling him NP Pradeep. And I touch the ball for Mark Schwarzer. On the occasion of his 83rd international appearance, Alex Tobin's all-time record, hoving ever closer into view. I suppose the other interesting thing about tonight's game, Andy, from Australia's point of view, is how they perform. They were pretty underwhelming against the UAE. Holger Osik has gone with the experienced side that he said he would. He's gone with two strikers as well.
Well, the UAE game was one that Holger Osik wanted to come and go. If he was going to have a warm-up game, much would have preferred to have had a team not playing in the tournament. And from that starting point, then he took that evening very cautiously, resting players. Luke Wilshere substituted at half-time or thereabouts. He was sitting on a yellow card and maybe getting a little angry with things. The guys who came in did well. Matt Mackay, Nathan Burns in particular. So still a worthwhile exercise, because now the coach can have confidence that those other alternatives are worth pursuing if needs be.
And the bigger test, of course, to come against South Korea and Bahrain. This is Steven Diaz for India. Not too much trouble for Mark Schwarzer. We have already seen, though, Andy, a couple of shocks at this Asian. India beating Saudi Arabia last night, and Jordan coming within a whisker of defeating the favourites, Japan.
Yeah, yesterday was a sensational day for the Asian Cup. The two belting games of football. Japan a little underwhelming, to be frank, but to labour that point would be to take some measure away from what Jordan achieved, and one shouldn't do that because they were outstanding. The second game was one of the most exciting games of football I've seen for quite some time. Syria-Saudi.
Super game. Now Brett Holman trying to slip it through for Harry Kuhl, who was just on his heels because he knew he was borderline offside. In fact, it was more than that. He was offside.
A very narrow angle on that pass. It was just a toenail in it, really. It's a good decision from the assistant, but really there was just a toenail in it.
Anwar Ali, the tall, rugged centre-back for India. Plays for Dempo in Goa, one of the leading clubs in the I-League. Better news for Indian football over the last few days. The All Indian Football Federation has just signed a new television deal, which will net the domestic game quite a lot of money over the next 15 years. Trying to restructure the competition, make it professional, and get India back up to the sort of level they enjoyed, at least on the regional stage, in the 50s and 60s. And they were regular competitors and winners, particularly at the Asian Games. As Kale finds Holman, dinks it up, and here's Brett Emerton, who is offside. Wouldn't have counted. Well,
Brett Holman ignoring the run of David Carney. And another, I would say, good decision, a close one, a really close one. It was one of those ones really in the modern game where the assistant can't get it wrong, because if he waves play on, it's close enough to have that be acceptable. Brent Emerton looking to score. He's already scored in that goal once in a World Cup qualifying, the 3-0 victory. Stage 3 of World Cup qualifying for 2010, Australia v Qatar.
He got 2 that night, didn't he?
Well, certainly. One was in that goal. I can't remember where the other one was. So
at the other end.
Oh, well, there you go. I've hedged my bets.
Harry Kewell. Teasing and tormenting the Indian defenders, eventually unleashing. It might break here for Holman, but Subrata Pal comes out together.
And they've just won the league, India. They've just won the Asian Cup with that claim from Subrata. They're very excitable.
It's like being at a cricket ground in Mumbai or Kolkata.
Well, more the point, it's more like being in the derby between Kingfisher, East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. Massive rivalry. Watchers, viewers, listeners who are new to the prospect of India as a football country shouldn't be under any illusion. Football goes long and deep into Indian history. And that Calcutta derby is really something to see. It's something on my must-do list.
Yep, crowds regularly of over 100,000 they get for that game. It is a mystery, isn't it, why such a populous country where football is so popular, they have struggled for so long, but it's all down to infrastructure.
I was talking with a number of the Indian journalists who've gathered for the game, and it is infrastructure, it is organisation.
Now Emerton is onside, just break away Andy. Cahill waits in the middle, Timmy Cahill! It's taken 11 minutes, but it's Timmy Cahill again on the score sheets, a goal scorer at 2 World Cups, and now 2 Asian Cups to boot, and Australia lead.
Well, the Indian resistance, for the time being at least, has been broken. It's a very, very familiar face, Timmy Cahill. It's a familiar supply line, Brent Emerton. Another close offside call, but fair enough, play on. Emerton, one of the good servants, great servants of recent times for the green and gold, puts it on a plate for Australia's greatest goal scorer. And Timmy Cahill doesn't disappoint. The corner flag gets the regular treatment, and Australia are away.
Tim Cahill's 22nd international goal. And they've all come in just 47 appearances. And the Indian crowd has gone a little bit quieter. They only managed to hold out for 11 minutes, and now really they must focus. Cahill found the raking ball, but it was cut out by Deepak Kumar Mandal, who brings it forward for India. NP Pradeep looking for Syed Rahim Nabi. He's actually playing on the left-hand side of midfield, Nabi. He is actually a left-sided defender by trade, which perhaps tells you something a little bit about the Indian mindset.
Well, doubly painful for India to concede so relatively early, just 11 minutes gone. Doubly painful because no team wants to concede at any time and no team wants to concede early, but India would have their head full of this notion that they shouldn't be here, and they'd be leaving in their right to a top 16 place in Asia. And an early goal was only going to confirm that. The longer it was going to go on, the more India would have the self-belief that actually, no, we're a member of Asia, we've qualified legitimately, and we're going to give this a go. But early goals and concessions such as that just going to reinforce in their own mindset.
Here's NP Pradeep with India's first shot on target.
He's been busy. Pradeep early. Bursting forward from his more holding role in midfield to get that shot on goal. Cahill offside. In danger of a yellow card there.
Cahill saying he couldn't hear the whistle.
Well,
Not quite sure that's true.
He very quickly leapt to his own defence there. I mean, this has to be one of the riding instructions for the Socceroos here. Cahill clearly offside in attempting to win the matches they must. And in a low-pressure environment, which, in fairness, it will be, apart from their own expectations, they mustn't do anything silly, pick up yellow cards, which will hurt them later in the tournament, potentially.
Well, 4 years ago, it took Australia until injury time against Oman to get their first goal of the tournament, and they were never really on the front foot from that moment on, but much more confident start by the Green and Golds this afternoon.
Timmy Cale got things going at the Raja Mangala 4 years ago as well. A late saviour that day. But Australia's blushes were to come later in the tournament.
High foot by Miller Jedinak on the Indian captain. Climax Lawrence, another one who plays for Dempo. Lawrence actually has a son called Xavi after the Barcelona midfielder. Sure he tries to model his game on the Spanish star. Stephen Diaz, Chetri, and then Pradeep. That's better football by India. This is Deepak Kumar Mandal. Pradeep. Goodness me, Andy, if India score, they're going to take the roof off this stadium.
Well, it'd almost be worth it, wouldn't it, just to see how they react. But every pass is met with a huge cheer. Every save from Subrata is received similarly.
Here goes Deepak. Support from Syed Rahim Nabi. Held up by Jedinak. Back to Gurumangi Singh. Had that little spell in Melbourne with Melbourne Heart last year, but wasn't offered a contract. And now, misjudgment by Brett Emerton, who thought he was fouled, could let India in here. This is Climax Lawrence, the chance to shoot. And he's curled it wide. And again, huge excitement all around the Jassim bin Hamad Stadium. And that was a decent opportunity for the Bhangra boys.
It was really good. I mean, they mightn't get that close again. Certainly mightn't have that much time and space around Australia's penalty area. It was very sloppy defending. Anticlimactic, the finish.
To coin a phrase. Too high for Cale. Just. He is the go-to man again, isn't he, for goals? Timmy Cale. Always in the right spots. He's made a fine art of it down the years, whether it's on the ground as it was there or in the air. Just times it to perfection, and a very neat finish too. Here's Pradeep. Broken up by Kalina. Emerton, who already has an assist to his name. Carney. Jedinak to Holman, and back again. Wiltshire to Kalina. Carney. Cahill the meat in the sandwich. Emerton might bring it down. Flags up far side.
There have been plenty of offsides against Australia. That replay doesn't show exactly what the assistant saw.
I think he's flagging for Harry Kewell being offside, but the ball hadn't arrived towards
Well, if that's the case, Simon,
Kewell.
And I must agree with you, that was my response as well, because Emerton wasn't offside. And if we're both right, the assistant flagged way too early. there's been a lot of stuff in the air from Australia. 18 minutes gone. I think their next challenge, once their nerves settle, if they haven't yet, is to outpass India. At the moment, they're playing a very obvious card, which is to exploit the physical mismatch, and it's stark. Australia tower above their Indian counterparts. But they're not going to be able to go over the top necessarily against South Korea, and the further Australia go into the tournament, assuming, of course, that's the case, the less effective that approach is going to be.
It'll certainly be different in a few days' time against South Korea, one of the other pre-tournament's favourites. Emerton's clip towards the box, somewhat aimless. India bring it out now. In the shape of Kumar Singh. Stephen Diaz down the line. Australia, by the way, played their very first game in a major tournament against India. As we look at the possession statistics, heavily weighted in favour of the green and gold, as you'd expect. That was the Melbourne Olympics back in 1956. In fact, they played them twice. Australia won the first game, India the second. And then followed it up with a 7-1 friendly win over Australia. As Carney clips it in, Cahill is offside. Ball's in the back of the nets for the second time off the Everton man, but this one will not count. This is going to be interesting.
Well, it should count. I mean, his left pinky, I think, is strayed into an offside position. Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. It was close, if anything. But Australia's pattern so far is keep the ball on the deck. That's what they're trying, at least, till 2/3 of the way up the field, and then cross the ball into the penalty area. A bit of a slight variation as the game goes on might be something for which we look. Maybe pass the ball through the congestion. Try and move some of the Indian defenders out of their comfort zone.
This is Neil. Back for Sasha Ognanovsky, third cap this evening. Kalina. Not a great ball by Jason Kalina. And India now have it through Pradeep. Climax Lawrence, or rather Syed Rahim Nabi. Deepak, thumped away to safety by Ognanovsky. Kalina over the top. The Indian defence out of position. Kuhl tees up Holman. And it's gathered by Subrata Pal.
A good ball over the top from Jason Kalina and good awareness from Harry Kuhl. Holman didn't get onto it as he would have liked. Subrata, he went to ground way too early. And didn't look completely comfortable, it should be said.
Holberosik jotting down a few notes. Sure he'll be happy that the goal has perhaps steadied a few Australian nerves. Really on a hiding to nothing this afternoon, Australia. Anything but a convincing win. A lot of questions are going to be asked. It's not always that easy, is it, in international football? Breaking down packed defences as Japan certainly found out to their cost yesterday. Although in fairness, Jordan probably a class or two above India. This is Harry Kewell, who's found a metre of space. Kewell lashes it! Oh, that's a super goal by Harry Kewell! Australia double their lead in the 25th minute. And it's a sweet left-footed strike by Harry Kewell.
Well, Kewell just had too much time to set this up. He has got a delightful left foot. We've been watching it for years. We've been admiring it for years. And with this sort of space that comes the way of Australia's number 10, more goals are going to result than not. Just way too much time to pick his spot, and pick his spot he did. He saw that far post space available, and like a laser, the ball found it. Beautiful shot.
Harry Kewell's 14th goal for his country and his first since April 2009. Well, it's going to be about keeping the scoreline respectable, isn't it, for India? The further Australia get away, the more you'd fancy that Indian heads might drop somewhat. It's a loose touch from Emerton. Mohamed Rafi unable to capitalise. Carney. Cries of turn for Brett Emerton. Not too many options ahead. Kewell will spread the play for David Carney. Kalina square for Holman. Australia starting to play a bit here. Wilkshire hangs it up, and that's a good take by Subrata Pal.
The one thing you have to say about India so far is there's not really any hint of them parking the bus, to coin that phrase. As soon as Australia move the ball into India's half, India are still leaving two players around halfway.
Now Sunil Chhetri, Australia's biggest foe perhaps this afternoon. The absence of Baichung Bhutia. Bit of a wrestling match going on between Stephen Diaz and Jason Kalina. Diaz had a bit of a lash out there at Kalina. Behind play. There's always a bit of an edge when the two nations meet on the cricket field, but perhaps here too. Too high for Emerton. Just on the average age of this Australian side, Andy, 30 years old, that's the mean age throughout the starting 11. It's a very senior international side, isn't it, to play the major tournament?
We're the oldest squad here at the Asian Cup. Iran coming second, India third. But it is, in comparative world football terms, an old squad. I think at the last World Cup, only Italy was in the same sort of range. Quite obviously, we wouldn't expect that to be a deciding factor in a match against India. Quite how well Australia perform in the following matches is going to be of immense interest. Huge desire from the team to win the Asian Cup, which is a terrific thing. Completely expected, of course.
Now Stephen Diaz is known as the David Beckham of India. Let's see what he can produce from this free kick. Not much. That wasn't even posh, never mind, Bex. They do like those monikers, don't they, right across the region?
Well, it does bring me back to a point talking with the Indian journalists, some of them who are here today. Your question, that they love football in India. There's a middle class in India which is at least 500 million people. That's enough for sport to do some serious business, as we see with the Indian Premier League in cricket. So why not football?
India's richest man said to be interested in getting involved with the I-League as Wiltshire floats one in looking for Cahill. Gurumangi Singh has got a busy afternoon trying to deal with Cahill's aerial prowess. India cough up cheap ball again. Emerton. Wiltshire. That'll be a corner for the Socceroos.
And apart from the infrastructure and poor organisation from the governing body over many years, it's the power of the English Premier League which the local football authorities struggle with. They just cannot compete. And this is an issue for football in Asia.
That swinging corner comes out for Holman, who drives it, and Cahill might follow up. Oh, how did that stay out? Credit to the goalkeeper, Subrata. Managed to get his body in the way, but it looked for all money as though Timmy Cahill was just going to walk the ball into the net.
Well, we've seen plenty of deflections result in goals already in the first couple of days of the Asian Cup. Not so for Australia then.
Cahill trying to cushion the header. Ognanovsky just over the top. Well, well done the goalkeeper, Subrata Pal. He is rated as one of the better players in this Indian side. Indeed, he had a trial with Vancouver Whitecaps, the MLS side, last year, although they didn't take up the option on him. Here's another look at Harry Kewell's long-range belter. Very sweetly struck indeed. Ali Al-Badwawi. Just had a word or two with Jason Kalina and Stephen Diaz some moments ago. Just telling them to settle down. They've had quite a scrap, those two. Jedinak fighting the run of Brett Emerton. Another huge bomb launched towards the Indian penalty box. Kewell to Kalina, now Carney. India trying to push up and play a high line, condense the play. Gurumangi Singh is marshalling the back line. That's a good tactic. They've forced Australia back into their own half. Well intercepted by Deepak. This is Syed Rahim Nabi. Climax Lawrence, the captain. To Sunil Chetri. But again, it's all too easily broken up by Australia. You'd fancy, Andy, that the threats from India in a goal sense are going to be sporadic.
Well, if that. Australian sloppiness is their greatest enemy. We've seen a couple of examples of it, so they're going to have to remain vigilant. Again, they look for Cahill, who chests it down, and it sits nicely for him. And another great save from Subrata. Denies Cahill a second goal. Well, he continues to look the business, Timmy Cahill, doesn't it? And it's beautiful control with the chest. Immaculate technique with the volley. And from that point on, you can only admire the work of Subrata in the Indian goal. he is covering himself in glory at the moment.
At the expense of a corner, which Kalina takes. Cahill unmarked, free header. It's a real test for the team ranked 142 in the world. And their goalkeeper, at least, is up to the task. In fact, after their recent defeat in the United Arab Emirates, the Emirati coach Shretsko Katanet said he felt the Indian team was ordinary, but then the goalkeeper was superb. Difficult to argue on today's evidence. Kuehl. Holman. Australia starting to find little gaps here and there. Carney's ball is not the best. And away from India through side Rahim Nabi. Now Mohammad Rafi. Deepak. Anwar Ali with the long ball, but that's too easy really for the Australian defence. Now Deepak's giving the ball away. Holman. Kuehl. Kalina. Carney is the free man. Header clear by Deepak. Back in by Jedinak. Only partly clear by Guramangi Singh. Oh, trouble here again for India. Emerton couldn't find the right delivery.
It's a very narrow attack. We have to preface most comments you make here because of the context of this match and the complete differential in quality between Australia and India. But David Carney's had a couple of chances to get outside his man and down towards the byline. I think on occasion at least it's a better option rather than these narrow clipped passes.
Wiltshire's corner. Drops here for Jedinak. And now Holman. Took a touch off an Indian player. Another corner. Brett Holman, one of Australia's World Cup heroes, perhaps even the World Cup hero. 2 goals in South Africa. 4 of Australia's last 9, all told. And the goalkeeper's fumbled that one, but he was fouled. I'm not quite sure whether he was fouled by an Australian player, in fairness. I think it was his own defender, but the whistle's gone nonetheless.
Yeah, there's no doubt. A case of mistaken identity. But Mila Jedinak was close enough to the smoking gun in the eyes of the referee. That can't be a foul. A wrist on a forearm. It was indeed his teammate, Subrata's teammate, who took him out. He landed fairly heavily too.
Well, the boxing kangaroo has landed a couple of punches already. And this large and vocal, predominantly Indian crowd has not yet had too much to celebrate. Maybe they will here. Well, they've got a free kick at least for the push on Nabi by Brett Emerton. So into the Indian beckon once more.
You're going to persist, aren't you?
Till he gets one. Listen to the noise again. It's wonderful. So here he goes, Stephen Diaz.
Worth a shout. Worth a shout indeed. Mark Schwartz's most pressing moment of the half. Nicely flighted free kick. Anwar the target. Schwarzer untroubled in the end.
I'm sorry to keep giving the cricket analogies, but when he's winding up to do that, it was like an Indian fast bowler running in at Eden Gardens, and then the ooh as it goes through to the keeper behind. Meantime, Holman for Emerton. Looking for Kuhl, again the goalkeeper. Good work by Subrata.
Athletic again from Subrata. Landed heavily on his knee, which is going to require attention. He needs to be applying for overtime this evening.
There was a rumour that Arsenal were somewhat interested in his services. I'm not quite sure whether it would have been as a number one. And there you go, he's made 6 saves already. And of course, the Asian Cup can be a stage to put yourself in the shop window. And he's going to get plenty of practice, isn't he, you'd reckon, in this tournament?
Increasingly it will be the window. You said at the top of the broadcast that the Perth Glory were here looking at Sunil Chetri. You'd like to think that the more robust and sophisticated leagues in Asia are here en masse, scouting players, J-League, K-League, A-League.
Well, Bobby Houghton can still smile, particularly when he sees his goalkeeper recovering.
Well, I admire their approach on a hiding to nothing. Australia on a hiding to nothing as well. It's a tough game for both teams to address for those reasons. But India, under Bobby Houghton, haven't planted 10 bodies in the box in front of their goalkeeper. They're leaving players upfield, hoping, probably against hope for a counter-attack, but nevertheless, they've come to do what they think they want and need to do, and congratulations to them.
Subrata's okay. Polina about to take the corner. It's Australia's 7th. Partly cleared by Anwar Ali. Put back in by Brett Holman. Cleared away desperately by Climax Lawrence. They can't get it away. And it's prodded just wide by Miller Jedinak. And India survive.
Well, that was in the realms of the under-6 gala day. Bodies en masse, bees to the honeypot. Miller Jedinak with the Bruce Lee impersonation to finish things off.
So Subrata to get us back underway. Plays his club football for Pune FC in the Indian I-League, at least for the moment. This is Climax Lawrence. Mohammad Rafi trying to make some progress. Sunil Chetri. It's better by India. Maybe a chance here. A volley, or a half volley at least, by Stephen Diaz. Flashes wide of the target.
Well done. That has to be the building block of Indian football, if not for this game, but from this point forward. They were in close proximity to each other. They received the ball well. They passed and moved well. And Stephen Diaz with ultimately the chance on goal. And the evidence of the 11 who are before us now representing India, physically, they're going to find international football difficult. But if their building block is speed and technique, there's no reason why they can't compete. And that was a little template, a little cameo we saw then of what should be their way forward. Australia not immune from that approach either, or shouldn't be. They have the advantage of being a bigger, more athletic, physical specimen at this point. This is also one of the advantages for Asia of Australia's move into Asia, Simon. It's largely European background in the Australian football team. It's a really important competitive variable for Asian football. So many of the Asian teams historically have struggled when they've had to go out of their region, principally into the World Cup, where physically they've found the going really difficult.
Now Harry Kuhl trying to race onto that through ball from Holman.
Simply because they haven't had to face European type physiques and mentalities in qualifying processes. Well, that process has changed slowly of its own need, but the inclusion of Australia has really sped that up.
Stephen Diaz. Trying to pick out Mohamed Rafi. Free kick Australia. Well, we're almost at half-time, Andy. The damage isn't too severe for India. You'd probably say Australia are reasonably satisfied too.
I'd reckon both teams would be. This is a difficult game for both to approach as an opener for the Asian Cup.
Kewell allowed to turn. Wiltshire on the overlap. Plenty of bodies waiting. Cahill leaps, the goalkeeper gets there. Kewell on the half volley over, but again the referee has decided there was a foul on the goalkeeper.
Good work from Australia. That's more like it. It's a beautiful touch on that cross from Luke Wiltshire. There's no foul there. Got a fair degree of sympathy from referee Al-Badwawi.
Strikers have got to be allowed to challenge for the ball.
Of course they do. You know, as a member of an Australian team, you're not going to blow up in a match against India about something like that. But I tell you what, if they're blowing fouls for that sort of non-contact in bigger games, well, surely it won't happen. Let's just expect that there's a little bit of charity being offered from Mr. Al-Badwawi.
Little shot by Neil on Chetri. Gives India another set piece. They've had 2 or 3 from this sort of position, and Stephen Diaz hasn't really got one right yet. Maybe now's the moment. Short run up. Again, not a great delivery. And those roars are stifled once more from the stands. Now they've got to scamper back and defend because Harry Kewell's in possession. 2 defenders for company. Still manages to get the cross in. Tidied up by Anwar Ali. Wiltshire. Now Emerton in acres of space. Time to measure the cross. 3 waiting for Australia. Holman is 1, and that is 3-0 for the Socceroos. Too easy. Emerton had too much time, too much room, and Brett Holman said, "Thank you very much."
Well, all of the above, Simon, and Subrata Paul can only do so much for so long. He's completely exposed. Brett Holman ghosting in unmarked. Got to the ball before the goalkeeper. Not even Mr. Al-Badwawi could see a foul in that one. And Australia go 3 clear. Right on the cusp of half-time.
Well, it's about time for India to concede. They've done reasonably well up until that moment. But 3 goals for the green and golds mean the points are safe. Now it's probably just a question of how many. At the interval in Doha, it's India 0, Australia 3. Well, we said, Andy Harper, that Bobby Houghton and probably Holger Osek would be reasonably satisfied with what they'd seen. You'd fancy the ledger has just changed a little bit in that regard.
Well, I still think Bobby Houghton will be reasonably happy. I mean, his goalkeeper is the reason why it's not...
Well, there are 116 places between India and Australia in the FIFA rankings, and at times in the first half it's looked exactly that. Australia leading by 3-0, and could have been a few more. 1 goal disallowed. Subrata in the Indian goal has made a couple of good stops, but I don't think there is any doubt, Andy Harper, as to where the points are headed. It's just really a matter of how many.
Well, it was that sort of scenario at kick-off, and the first 45 minutes has only served really to vindicate all the points of speculation. No changes for Australia at half-time. One wonders how long that's going to be the case.
Well, particularly you might think with somebody such as Scott McDonald, who's waited so long for an international goal. They're up against Minnows today. Maybe this is a chance for him to boost his confidence.
Well, possibly. More to the point, though, if they were able to resist the temptation of focusing at all on the second game against South Korea, that's going to be more and more difficult from this point on. And if Holger Osik thinks Kale is a better up-front partnership, I think he'll persevere it for the sake of practice as much as anything through this second half. Player fitness considered.
So Australia get us back underway through Messrs Kuehl and Kale, both of whom are already on the score sheet. Brett Holman too, right on the stroke of half-time. And you'd imagine this second period would follow a similar pattern. Australia enjoying the lion's share of possession in the first half, 67% in fact. And trying to boost their goal tally ahead of the more difficult task to come against South Korea and Bahrain.
Well, that's interesting, that possession stat, Simon, because at half-time in Japan-Jordan yesterday, there's not nearly the disparity between Japan and Jordan. The Japanese were at 71% possession at half-time, so against a stronger opponent, they kept the ball better. And if we're looking for things to take out of that first half, that might be one thing. Again, very difficult to take lines of measurement out of that first half of football because of the disparity between the two teams. But I'd reckon Holger Osik, and we know he's the type of coach who looks for things to keep players on their toes. He doesn't want complacency. You can almost guarantee that half-time address was spiky to keep his players on edge. I'd suggest that one area of comment from him might be that down that left-hand side, just to repeat. I didn't think we attacked down the left at all well. David Carney didn't look willing to get past his man at all.
Just got a brief glimpse there of Sunil Chetri. He'll be anxious to impress. It's been made public. The Perth Gloria having a look at him today. There he is. And we're told that he's actually just been given a free transfer by his club in the United States. He's had a few goes at making it overseas. Interest from Leeds and Celtic in 2008, then had a trial with Coventry, was actually offered a contract with Queen's Park Rangers, but couldn't get a work permit. He's had precious few opportunities, as you would expect, being a striker in this Indian team against the Australians this evening, to show what he can do.
Well, he is the single biggest reason they're here at all. Scored plenty of goals in the 2008 AFC Challenge. 2011. But he doesn't get a lot to pick over when you lead the line for India. Otherwise.
Cahill looking for Kuehl, and Subrata is out together. Release is a bit too early, and Jason Kalina onto it in a flash. Australia again trying to set the tempo at the start of this second half. This is Jedinak. Kalina finding Emerton. Wilkshire, Kuehl in space. Little touch for Holman. Got it caught up in between his feet. And now Chetri trying to link with Mohamed Rafi. It's been very comfortable though in the main for Messrs Neil and Ognanovsky. Is that the central defensive partnership you think that Holger Osik has settled on for this tournament, Andy?
I would imagine so. Makes a lot of sense too, if that's to be the case. It was the second game against South Korea where Sasa Ognanovsky has just been so dynamic for Seong now. He's new to the international game, Sasa Ognanovsky, but he'll feel very comfortable playing against the Korean Republic.
And he's just palmed away Mohamed Rafi Ognanovsky. Little sleight of hand off the ball that escaped the referee's notice. Cahill. Kuehl. He's found those little spaces well this evening and feeding Emerton. Wiltshire in attendance. Little chip up towards Cahill, who leaves it at the behest of Brett Holman, who then makes an almighty mess of it. And all of a sudden, India try and launch a counter. Jedinak. Strange atmosphere inside the stadium. When India have the ball, feels like a cup final. When Australia have it, feels like a training ground session.
Looks like one too.
They've really turned out in great numbers, haven't they, the Indian supporters? So the stadium over 2/3 full. Maybe they've got something to cheer here. This is Stephen Diaz. Cue the silence. A goal, any Indian goal, would probably be celebrated as though they'd won the Asian Cup itself. They've not looked too likely this evening. Cahill. Holman to Kalina, now with Carney. Nobody there for Australia. Clearance by Deepak. Headed on by Mohamed Rafi. Chance for Sunil Chetri to put some pressure on Ognanovsky. Kalina with the switch. Emerton, done well there to run it down. Wiltshire. Beautifully done by Emerton. Kuehl backed into a corner. He's strong enough and he gets the cross in. Carney. And it's deflected behind for a corner.
Well, it's slow and methodical from Australia. In the end, the ball not really sitting for anyone to get a good piece on it. Carney hooking the ball back. Time for the party tricks as well from Brett Emerton in the leader.
India defend the corner well. Now perhaps a chance. Sunil Chetri, always second best behind David Carney. Mark Schwarzer glad of a feel of the ball, I think.
He spent the entire half-time period out on the field, acquainting himself with the orb.
Might be a bit busier against South Korea.
They're going to be under a lot of pressure in that game.
That's up next for the Socceroos.
Well, passage to the round of 16 will be dependent upon that game. They can secure it early with a good performance. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how the Korean Republic go a little later this evening against Bahrain. In fact, it's the round of point. I've got to do my maths. 4 times 2. It's never a strong point.
Gets confusing after the World Cup. That was the round of 16, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, linesman's got his flag up on the far side, and the Indian players stopped for a moment. Wiltshire didn't. It's a poor delivery by Luke Wiltshire. Not sure whether the referee just didn't see the linesman or
he waved
ignored
him
it.
away. No, he waved him away. They communicated. But whatever was being flagged for was dealt with.
Two Bretts combining, Emerton and Holman. Putted through by Kuehl, super stuff. Holman tees it up, Tim Cahill. Could have been 4 for Australia, perhaps should have been 4.
Well, good touch, Harry Kuehl through midfield. Rode the challenge nicely, turned and threaded the ball for Brett Holman. Carl didn't at all collect that. Scored a goal from a similar angle v Qatar at Suncorp Stadium to get things going in a World Cup qualifier. Almost identical angle. Much more important that he scored that night in Brisbane. Because Australia already 3 goals to the good here. There's more on offer, you'd fancy.
Kalina, Holman. Chances going to start racking up with fancy for Australia.
Down that right-hand side, such a consistent performer for the national team.
Wiltshire on corner kick duty. Looking for Cahill's lead, as per usual. Holman brings it down, shakes off one defender. Sasha Ognanovsky with a little chip, and the flag's up again. And Australia have the ball in the back of the net. But for a second time in this game, it won't count. And the decision is absolutely 100% correct. Are you seeing better things out of that combination on the left-hand side, Andy?
Not yet.
You? No, I'm with you. Is that a foul by Conley? Play on, says the referee.
Yes, it was a foul. Fair enough.
Climax Lawrence. Kalina losing out momentarily. India desperate at least to put some pressure on the Australian goal. Give their noisy supporters something to cheer. Instead, it's Brett Emerton for Australia. That's a good ball by Kalina. He had to turn and hit it all in one movement. Holman's ball, Emerton with the finish, and he's dragged it wide.
Oh, that was better from Australia, and principally because the ball from Jason Kalina was so instinctive and so positive. Emerton half side foot, half instep. Not convincing otherwise. Player has had a good game for Australia. Put on a couple of goals, scored one himself. You mentioned the whole spectre of goal difference, Simon. Australia's first duty is to secure the 3 points. At what point, if any, do they worry about racking up a decent differential? Because you do get the feeling in a tournament like this, indeed any tournament, when there's one team so grossly outclassed as India is, it's going to be harder and harder for them to raise themselves emotionally game on game. which would mean a punch-drunk India against South Korea could potentially be a huge bloodbath.
Could be ugly.
So does Australia settle for just the 3 points now, or do they start really to push on with that whole goal difference issue in mind? Of course, Australia's group, when you're starting to talk about crossovers with Group D, is Iran, Iraq's group.
Yep, tough quarter-final looming potentially for Australia, as Jedinak sweeps it out to Luke Wiltshire. Kale couldn't quite get there. India are going to make a change very shortly. Ball still in play. And David Carney has ghosted past one defender. Now Neil under a bit of pressure. Never in doubt, was it? Yet a next decision to turn back towards the halfway line. Certainly frustrated Brett Emerton.
Lucas Neal too was about to pin his ears back and join in an attack.
Neil with a cross. Kurumangi Singh there for India. This is Deepak. Well done by the fullback. Pradeep. We've played an hour at the Al Sadd Stadium. Australia still not added to those 3 first-half goals, and instead it's Sunil Chetri for the Bangla boys. Syed Rahim Nabi gets himself clean. Well, it was nowhere near the targets, but even the run and the fact that he shrugged off Kalina was enough to bring the Indian fans to their feet. Here's the first substitutions. NP Pradeep is going to be replaced by Merajudi Wadu, midfielder from East Bengal, who is nicknamed the Tank for his physical strength.
And he got a huge cheer when his name was read out pre-game. That privilege or that response was reserved for only a couple of players. Chung Bhutia was one, of course a national hero from a football fan's viewpoint. But Meraj Wadu, also from a Muslim background, and a large chunk of the Indian workers in Qatar are of either Muslim background and or from the state of Kerala down south. So all the players from that part of the world, huge cheer, very, very well received.
Matt Mackay on for Australia for his 8th cap as well, in place of Miller Jedinak. Sunil Chetri has had a miserable task, hasn't he, trying to get involved in the game. Every time he thinks there's the potential for him to latch onto the end of the ball, the pass is wayward. Here's Harry Kewell. Cut out by Surkumar Singh. It goes for Mohammad Rafi. Gets the flick on this time. Chetri away after it, and Ogmanovsky across.
Well, you're talking about teams that have improved since half-time as India make a second change. Mohammad Rafi making way for Yadav.
Yep, Abhishek Yadav from the Mumbai club. He has a post-grad degree in political science.
Well, he'll never be unemployed in India. Yeah, well, of the two teams, you'd have to say India have made the better improvement since half-time. 11 minutes into the first half, Tim Kale scored. There's been no goals since we've started the second half. They've survived a lot longer this time round.
18.5 minutes to be precise. Cardi. Up it goes for Cahill, nods it down. Emerton. Wiltshire. And Australia get the free kick. Matt Mackay on the end of the tackle from Deepak. Let's see if Luke Wiltshire can get this delivery right from the set piece. Australia hunting for goals, and they've got one. Timmy Cahill again. Who else? 2 for Cahill, 4 for Australia.
Well, it is quite a sight. Rising like a phoenix through the pack does Timmy Cahill, and he nails the header. And he's just so powerful in the air. There's plenty of players he's got to negotiate, but look at him get above the pack. Eyes on the ball, arms for balance, cocks the head, rockets the neck through the ball, and into the back of the net she goes. Mr. Reliable, Mr. Dynamic, Mr. Aerial Power, Tim Cahill. 2 for the night, more to come, probably.
And Cahill now within 6 goals of being Australia's joint all-time top scorer, along with Damien Murray. Well, finally, Australia add to their tally. It took 20 minutes, the best part of. Here come India. Chance for them, perhaps, but they've blazed it high, wide and handsome through Stephen Diaz.
Well, that was their best chance. And really a good opportunity there. Bit of balance. Strike through the ball and at least find the target. He blazed away. Carney putting pressure on, but it wasn't the sort of pressure that really should have put Stephen Diaz off his game.
Carney, sorry, Andy.
No, I was just going to say, happy to see the change made by Australia. Matt Mackay on. He's a real option for the Socceroos and their current guys, in my opinion. Nathan Burns too. I'll be very interested to see if he gets any game time tonight. They were the 2 outstanding players in the friendly against the UAE. 2 players who bring that added quotient to the final third mix, which has been Australia's Achilles heel for some time now. Not to suggest perhaps that they're the final product or the definitive answer, but they can certainly provide some food for thought.
Cool, running the ball out of play. Better Harry Kewell's performance tonight, Sandy.
Yeah, good enough. It's a beautiful goal he scored. Harry's pretty much whereabouts we expect him to be nowadays. He's going to be invaluable to the team when the team is in a more consolidated system of play. It's a little bit haphazard tonight because of the nature of the opponent. That's my assessment at least.
Here's Cahill. On a hat-trick, of course. Kewell. Lovely ball by Tim Cahill. Holman. Kalina for Wiltshire. That should be the goalkeepers, and is. And Cahill's going to be penalised again. Replay will tell us whether there was contact this time. Nowhere near for mine. Maybe a slight touch. but it is only ever so slight.
Well, it's been the third or fourth such decision. There's nothing in writing on these at the moment, of course, which is why everybody can keep their cool.
Shade over 20 minutes left in Doha. India 0, Australia 4. India, by the way, haven't scored a goal in the Asian Cup final since 1964. They finished runners-up in that tournament, far smaller in those days than it is today. 27 years since they were last on the regional stage. And they've given the ball away far too cheaply. Here's Harry Kewell, will try and bend one.
Well, this is the value of Harry Kewell. You asked the question about him before. He's not going to get the same time and space against South Korea, there's no doubt. But he can lift his game in those tight areas where his technique will be the decisive factor. And that's why I think he's still got enormous value. I also think it's fair to say that gone are the days when Harry Kewell can burst past defenders with that unbelievable speed he used to have way back when. The cumulative impact of his injuries over the years have successfully taken that away, but not the technique. The technique is still there and the game intelligence is still there. And it's what Holger Ossie puts around Harry Kewell that is going to be the decisive discussion point, in my opinion.
Neil. Nicely weighted. Coleman. Mackay arriving to offer supports. Doesn't need it. And again, the goalkeeper offers line smartly to take.
Very good. He's only made the one error as far as I can recall tonight. Subrata Paul, and that was for the goal that Brett Holman ended up scoring. Otherwise, his judgment off the line has been good. He's lean and lithe and athletic off his line. He moves along the line as well. We saw a couple of good reflex saves in that first half. Very impressive customer.
Kalina again. The outlet is Brett Holman. Offers into position to offer support. Kalina is the option. Cahill offside. And that little break in play will allow Australia to make their second change, and it's going to be Harry Kewell withdrawn as we watch the decision against Tim Cahill again, and Scott McDonald is going to get his chance again to break his duck. His 22nd international appearance is tonight to be the night, Andy. He's tired of us talking about it, but that's what strikers have to cop, isn't it?
Of course, that's the measuring stick. And I can only keep repeating in his defence that one of Australia's greatest ever, Frank Farina, took 34 to break the duck. So he's still got a little bit of fat on the bone. But of course, as the expectations were mountainous on Australia to completely towel India up, so too are the expectations on Scott McDonald that game time against India was going to break that duck. He'll know it. He'll be sweating on it.
There's his first involvement. Well, there's a cheeky one from the substitutes, Abhishek Yadav. Why not? It's an awful long way out. Man who scored the winner against Vietnam in the LG Cup final in 2007 to earn India the first of their recent spate of regional trophies.
And that was their first trophy won abroad in 28 years of trying, so maybe he had a flashback.
You just wonder with Baichung Bhutia in the team, Andy, whether India might have made a little bit have a better fist of it, certainly in an offensive sense.
No, I don't think they've had much to play with. They've had a couple of half breaks, a couple of free kicks, which were decent enough. One or two of them blazed away, but there was a nice one. So no, I don't think Bochum Boudia would have made much difference at all, but Bobby Houghton still wants him around because of the role he plays as a figurehead of the team.
So an Indian free kick. So all the Indian fans on their feet, waving their flags. They're going to have to sit back down again. Here's Cahill. McDonald sets off on a run. Emerton is the option chosen. Wilkshire arriving. And the block by Deepak. Corner.
Just a little slow in getting to the scene of the crime, Luke Wilkshire. Purposeful burst from Timmy Cahill. Fed Emerton nicely. Luke Wilkshire just couldn't get there quickly enough.
They've got to beware of Cahill's aerial presence again. Oh, the acrobatic attempt by Scott McDonald. Not too far away from ending that drought.
He's hungry for it, isn't he? That's, to be fair, where he does most of his dangerous work, inside the 6-yard box.
Quarter of an hour to go. Syed Rahim Nabi has gone through a fair amount of work. 9 kilometres he's run this evening. Bobby Houghton hasn't sat down at the edge of the technical zone. He is the entire game. He's virtually trying to coach his team through every kick of this encounter. Dodged down by McDonald, but illegally so. Use of the arm, perhaps.
Well, 75 minutes in, I'd reckon Bobby Houghton would see this as a face-saver. There's been no humiliation for India. If Australia score a couple more, it'll start getting into that territory.
Nathan Burns is about to arrive for Australia.
Good to see.
Holger Osik has heeded your call, Andy.
I don't know about that. He's good, Holger, but he's not that good. Not the bionic hearing yet. He's making up his own mind, and I'm happy to see this change take place. Brett Emerton, who has had a good game. I can see that as much reward as anything else.
Yeah, a couple of assists by Brett Emerton. He's been very effective down that right flank, and that is where Nathan Burns will slot in. It's where he played against the UAE, of course, and where he plays for his club side, Ajax Athens. There he is, a 6th cap for Nathan Burns. Carney bringing Holman into the action. Burns was out-muscled, but they've got a corner, the green and gold. Wilkshire will have to delay the delivery. Bit of push and shove inside the penalty area. Involving Cahill and Yadav. Trying to keep a grips on Cahill is difficult enough at the best of times, and I think it was Cahill who got the final header. Not as much power on that one. No matter how you try and mark him, he's such a slippery fish, isn't he, inside the penalty box, Tim Cahill. Another change for India. P. Renedy Singh will replace the Indian David Beckham. Renedy Singh is also a midfielder and also a free kick taker. So it is like for like. And he's without a club at the moment, Renedy, formerly with JCT Mills, one of the famous old names of Indian football. Just under 11 minutes to go. And you'd imagine that Australia would want at least one more, possibly two more goals.
Well, it's only been a very slight return in this second half. 3-0 at half time, of course. Timmy Cale got things going underway after 11 minutes. Timmy Cale, scorer of the goal in this second half. Australia has dominated possession, but I think it's also reasonable to say that Subrata Paul in the Indian goal has had to do less work in this second half than the first.
Stoppage in play for the injury to Deepak. He plays for one of the Indian giants, Mohun Bagan. Plays restarted without him. Centre by Burns, drops for Brett Holman. Has he taken too long? And then Matt Mackay puts it into row G.
Dead heat. 91 kilometres apiece here between Australia and India. The only problem is we're not in the distance running game, we're in the goal scoring game, and there's a very distinct difference between Australia and India.
Many pundits would have thought more than 4 goals difference. Would that be perhaps a bit of a moral success for Bobby Houghton and his team? Here's Holman trying to extend the advantage. Nathan Burns stretches to keep the ball in play. And Yadav buy India a bit of time, but again, they just can't release Sunil Chetri.
That's poor technique, really. We talk about all the other issues in and around this game, but they had space and time. Just couldn't pass the ball as they needed to. And I must say, on that front, this Indian team has surprised me. I didn't expect them to be able to keep up with Australia on a whole range of fronts, but on some basic technical individual levels, I thought they might be better than they are.
Carney. Goal kick.
Shows all the hallmarks, David Carney in that replay of a footballer not getting a lot of game time, which is certainly his reality at the moment.
It's a reality for a few of the Australians in this squad.
Correct.
Of course, in comparison to some of the other nations, they've had rather limited preparation time as well. India, for example, I think have been in camp for the best part of 2 months. Now, Oglanovsky has been pinged for holding back Yadav. So Renedy Singh is going to get the opportunity to show us what he's got in the free kick department. Can they create just one chance here, India? No, foul by Sunil Chetri. Just putting the arm across the defender. Given away casually by Kalina. Chetri over the head of Climax Lawrence. Again, casually given away. Second time in a minute by Kalina. Randy Singh. And again, they can't pick out Sunil Chetri. And Australia just a bit casual there. A couple of times in the space of a few seconds. It's a better ball by Kalina.
Well, sloppiness was always going to be Australia's greatest foe. There have been a few examples of some sloppiness. It's certainly been sloppy enough to drag Holger Osik out of his chair and to the edge of his technical area.
Burns almost released. And credit to India, there's only 6 minutes to go and they've only conceded once, and they've got a chance here. Sunil Chetri, can he finish? And Schwarzer drops on the ball, and the chance has gone for India. That was their moment, and they couldn't capitalise.
No, they'll feel good about that chance. They'll have a little bit more spring in their step for the remaining minutes. With a huge shadow being cast over Chetri as he approached the goal in the form of Sashok Danovsky. Perhaps it was enough to put the Indian striker off. It's certainly going to be enough for Holger Osik to offload post-match on his team, if we know anything about the man at all.
McDonald's. No real opportunities for Scott McDonald, but this was the chance for India. Sunil Chetri springing the offside trap.
It is an issue for Australia, the central defensive pairing. On the odd occasion, Sashok Danovsky can get caught square. That was the case then.
Play quickly back up to the other end where it's been for most of the game. Carney trying to weave his way through two defenders. But again, they form an effective barrier. Yadav losing out to Neil. Burns. Dummy by Holman, but nobody behind him. And this performance by Australia in the second half has, at times, Andy, been rather patchy.
Well, this is the situation here, and not only could he feel the hot breath of Sashok Danovsky, he could also feel him as he reached out with his right hand, couldn't maintain balance, and the ball just lumping into Schwartz's safe hands. But you're right, it hasn't been a completely polished performance by Australia, indeed far from it. But this is always going to be a difficult game in some senses for them to play. It's where they go from here that is the most important.
But Australia clinch a fifth goal here. McDonald wants one himself, which I probably think, given his record, is fair enough. He gets a corner.
Well, he did well to make this one for himself, but well, I'm with you. I can understand the mentality, but it was still a greedy option. They're so desperate to get that first goal.
Carney's ball in. Kale goes for it. McDonald! Oh, he was offside. I just thought for a fraction of a second that was Scotty McDonald's moment.
And it wouldn't have mattered because it was another outstanding piece of work from Subrata Paul. There can be no question that he has been outstanding tonight for India. When you talk about, or we talk about, we agree Australia not completely polished, but a goalkeeper of any less calibre than this bloke, and Australia would have had their extra 2 or 3 goals.
Still might. Burns. Coleman is the free man. Wilkshire is the option. Well, just dribbled away to nothing, really, that opportunity. And I think there'll be probably a few questions asked, not least by the coach, as to why they haven't been able to further underline their territorial dominance. Timmy Cahill has 2 goals for the night, of course. But at times, is it fair to say, Andy, that the passing hasn't been crisp enough, fast enough?
More than fair. And if you're to analyse this game in absolute terms, they would be the things you would say. The movement hasn't been great. The system hasn't been readily discernible. More than one sloppy moment. That's the latest case in point. There is no excuse for David Carney to be offside there. The goal-scoring offsides, you can understand. But Carney, with that attack set, had the entire line in front of him. Shouldn't have been anywhere near offside. I'd suggest these are the points that Holger Rosick will hammer home, not because he's going to need to beat India again anytime soon, unless we draw them in a World Cup qualifying campaign, but there is no escaping the fact that to get out of this group, let alone really trouble South Korea, you're going to have to be much better.
As it is, there's no doubt that Australia's 450th senior international is going to end in success. They dearly love a 5th goal. McDonald trying to provide it. As we move into injury time, in which there's going to be 3 minutes. And India have conceded just 1 goal in this second period and had a really good chance of their own.
Now, I happen to think this Australian team can be much better. But no doubt the added incentive of playing the might of South Korea will bring out far more from them.
Here's Burns. Lovely turn by Nathan Burns. And credit to Anwar Ali, who made the block.
And this is another addendum as to why Nathan Burns should see more game time. This is the efficiency with which he opened up that space. It was really promising, and the finish was poor, but the lead-up was good.
Well, a few of the Indian fans starting to make for the exits, but they'd be well advised to stay and applaud their team, because even though they're on the wrong end of the results, they played pretty well, particularly second half, in their limited capabilities.
And never once has there been an indication where they just retreated with 10 men in the box. Never once. Even now, there's 2 players in the centre circle poised for a counter-attack.
Carney. Burns. McDonald's offside again. There's been too many of those. Only in fairness, Scotty McDonald was onside.
No, I don't think he was offside on that occasion. Still, he had enough time to remove all doubt. There's no pressure on Nathan Burns, who turned into space again.
Tenth time Australia's been called offside. India yet to be called once, but well, in fairness, they've not been in that part of the field on too many occasions. And this could be the last opportunity for Australia to add to their tally. Final 30 seconds or so. Neil. Almost a mistake by Gurumangi Singh. Mistake by Kalina. And that'll do. So Australia comfortable winners. They get the points as expected. But now for the bigger test to come against South Korea and Bahrain. It's a gentle opener, more akin really at times to a training session than a competitive game. But a win is a win. Brett Holman on the score sheet. Timmy Cahill with 2. And Harry Kewell got 1 as well. So Australia up and running at this Asian Cup. They have defeated India by 4 goals to 0. But what are the questions that come out of this game for Holger Osik. So handshakes all round between the Australians and the Indians. And there are smiles on the faces of Cahill and co, but India could be proud of their performance tonight. It would have been so easy for them to throw in the towel or park the bus, as you said, Andy. They had a bit of luck at times. Their goalkeeper helped them out. They had a couple of goals ruled out for offside. But in the end, they only conceded 4. Timmy Cahill with the first one. Harry Kewell grabbed the second. Brett Holman got the third right on the cusp of half-time. And you fancied that that might open up the doors in the second half. But in the end, only Tim Cahill's solitary header was added to the score sheet in the second half. So South Korea to come on January the 14th. It's Bahrain for Bobby Houghton and the Indians. And Tim Cahill moves to within sight of Damien Morey's all-time record on the goal-scoring list for Australia. So at the stadium where the Socceroos qualified for the World Cup, they are successful again. But it's the margin that will perhaps pose a few questions and raise a few eyebrows, Andy Harper.
Yeah, possibly the margin. I mean, if it gets down to goal difference, then of course Australia, if they're to qualify by that margin or by that issue through to the next round, well, that'll be the talking point then. It's just a little bit of sloppiness, and it's tough when you're so demonstrably superior to your opponents. Every coach faces it, every player faces it. How do you go about your business at normal speed, at normal intensity, when there's just such a difference in quality? And Australia never had a positive answer to that. They never really got themselves into a consistent system of play where it was just chance after chance after chance, and that's what a lot of people were expecting. But Bobby Houghton be well proud of his team. I can say there's a lot of high-fiving going on in the Indian technical area, and they'll feel as though this is a moral victory of sorts for them.
Standouts for Australia tonight. Timmy Cahill has got the Man of the Match award. Probably fair enough, given that he's got the 2 goals, but there were others that impressed.
Yep.
Kewell, Emerton.
Yep. Some of the big names as always. I thought that's probably about it. You know, Luke